Uh, and I think I have the audio.
We are back.
Yeah, we do. Oh, you go. So yeah, it's about an hour long. Let's take a look. I watch Sam Seder a good bit. I don't know enough about the guy that he's talking to. Apparently he's libertarian, and we'll see. I'm assuming he's coming. I'm assuming the libertarian's going to come from the aspect where this is bad because most libertarians I've talked to and know very much against taxes, and this was inevitably going to cause like more taxes. They're probably going to argue about fairness. Maybe if it was me and I was going against this, I would definitely, as I felt and kind of not justified, but the first inkling I got was like, should we be hitting some of these people? Like some of these, like I agree, some people definitely need this forgiveness. People maybe who've dropped out, people who haven't gotten a new job over the last like few years since they graduated, people who aren't earning enough. These are all things that I can definitely see like helping those people. 100% agree. But there is a benefit to going to college. We can't deny that. Taking on those loans is for an eventual earnings, which can be, I mean, that's the whole point of a loan. That's the point of why you do loans for business. You take on this debt so that you can excel yourself to a point where you'll be able to pay all that back. So there's a point to that, and we'll just see. I'm curious where he's going to come from. If it was me, I'd come from the aspect of, hey, I'm all for this. Well, I wouldn't be a libertarian then. I wouldn't, because he's not going to argue. He's probably not going to argue that this is good. Like there's a better version of that's good. He's probably going to say like, hey, this should never be. We shouldn't be talking about forgiving of loans. We should like be incentivizing people to take positions or do jobs that they could actually better themselves with. That's probably where he's going to come from. We'll see.
Sam Seder on the Majority Report. It is a pleasure to welcome to the program Brad Polumbo. He is a journalist and policy correspondent, the Foundation for Economic Education. Brad, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So now, Brad, you reached out to me. I think it
Kind of looks like Rami Malek, or what is his name from Bad Robot a little bit.
was on Twitter and wanted to have.
Since it is kind of fast and I'm not playing a game, I am also going to speed this up just a bit because it's pretty long.
Have a debate about
And Sam talks pretty small,
about
pretty slow.
Student debt forgiveness. This was before Biden made his announcement. Still relevant as to whether or not it's a good idea or whether there should be more of this. And so we figured let's do this. So let me just, before we get into the specifics about this, let me just
Wait, did I spell
ask you just
Sam's
a couple of
name
questions.
wrong?
These are just straightforward.
I just noticed this. I spelled Sam's name wrong. Wait, no, I did. No, I didn't. I spelled it right. No, wait. I spelled it wrong on the fucking... I spelled it wrong on the YouTube. Oh, well. Fuck me. I said Seder instead of Cedar. Oh, well. Fuck me, dude.
That I want to just get a sense of like,
Sure.
Give people a sense of like, what your perspective is on this. Are you for the idea of free college at all?
No.
No idea.
No.
Okay. And what about like free pre-K education in this country? Like preschool, pre-K?
You know, I've done a lot of work on higher ed policy. I can't say I've given universal
enough.
pre-K.
So, instantly coming out, hence free college. If you got the free pre-K, I don't know how you can argue that pre-K shouldn't be free. If we're already okay, well, people that will argue against public schools will say like that's not allowed. But the same system that we have public schools for should be for pre-K. I don't know why we wouldn't follow that. If we're allowing ages from like grades like 1 to 8 here in a public school or whatever the hell I forget, up 1 to 12 for high school for public schools, that is free. What you pay with taxes. I don't see why we wouldn't have that for preschool too. Like, we definitely should have it for preschool. But it looks like he's coming out fully against free college. I think there should be maybe free community college for sure. That would be one that I think could be fine. Well, I'm way more okay with, like, a system that's similar to private public schooling that would go up to certain colleges and certain degrees. I would be okay with. A full free version of what's it called? Of college? I don't know. I don't think so. Just because the benefits are so high that I don't know if we should make it free for everyone. Free for people, free for some. I think there should be some. I probably come down at the end of the day being like, we don't want people to be dissuaded because they can't pay back, because they can't like, the money is the reason why they can't do it. They might be just as smart, they might just be as capable, but because of either situations out of their control, they can't do it because of like money. That should never be the thing stopping you from bettering yourself. In my mind, that shouldn't be it. So if we could means test it in such a way where we focus on those people, 100% for it. A flat free for everyone, it's just hard for me to feel that way, because I don't know. If there were no, I would have to look at the outcomes. I could see it. I'm not morally against it. It's more of the fact, like, would we lose the quality? Would we lose quality if we did that? And would we be putting more people? Mostly if we would just lose quality. That'd be the main thing, actually. Like, we'd be able to afford it equally and like still not lose out on anything. Maybe we could, and in that case, I would be okay with it for the most part. But I feel like there would be problems with that. And there was an article that I think I read a while ago that was back when, because I think Europe recently rescinded that, or parts of Europe rescinded that, where they were doing that, where they had free college, and they had to like reverse it because they saw a lot of negative outcomes from that. Or I don't want to say a lot, I'm over exaggerating. I think there was like one or two.
Fair scrutiny to weigh in.
And what about free K through 12 education?
Yes, I believe in school choice, but I do believe in taxpayer funding for K-12 education.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Because if you had said no, then like there's no point in, obviously.
I know you've had some debates and conversations with anarcho-capitalists. I'm not an anarchist.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to, no, there's some libertarians out there who I think would argue against state subsidized K through 12 education. So, I just wanted to get that out of the way, because
Okay, so he's not fully against it. Already different than some other libertarians that I've talked to in the past, where they are fully against it. But that's good. That's good.
For a half hour and you didn't believe in any free education, I think it would certainly color this. Okay, so what is so why don't you lay out your argument as to why we shouldn't have any student debt relief?
Well, I think I'll start by acknowledging college is way too expensive, and we can talk about the reasons why. But I think that student debt cancellation, it really means debt transfer to the taxpayers. And I think it's fundamentally immoral to make other people pay. It feels like...
Okay, already hitting on the immoral thing. I don't know how you can say that. It's tax. Okay, everything he just said could be applied to the K through 12 thing. It can. If he thinks it's immoral to do it for colleges, it should be immoral to do it for K through 12. The fact that you're taking someone else's money to pay for your own kind of a thing.
These days that everybody goes to college, but actually only 1 in 3 Americans over age 25 has a bachelor's degree. They hold almost all of the student debt, and they also happen to earn a lot more on average. That's why people go to college. So when you ease a burden from them by transferring it on to the general public who all pay taxes, you're essentially comforting a relatively affluent slice of society. Not everybody is, but a better off slice of society at the expense of taxpayers in part who didn't even go to college. So I think it's pretty unfair as a matter of policy. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. It doesn't solve any of the problems. And yeah, that's kind of the general gist of the position.
So, it is kind of like a Band-Aid, because it's a one-time thing, but their policy to like help in the future, they have ideas to help that in the future so that it is more effective. I feel like I'm peaking way high in my microphone. Sorry. So yes, this is kind of like a Band-Aid, but they have goals to try and fix it for overall. So okay, but his thing about the people getting those people who get it, sure, they're all those people are going to like do well because they got a college degree and they're going to benefit from having that college degree. One thing that I would probably challenge him on right off the bat would just be, you're saying that there are groups of people, maybe a majority, maybe you feel majority of them are well off and can do this, but what about the people that can't? Like, there are people that go through the system that either have dropped out or they didn't get, they are in a scenario where they have way more loans than they can pay because of their job, because either in the job market they can't get one and they have, or something. Like, what should we do with these people? Should the people that are suffering, should they have their loan debt relief? Just start there. That's where I would start, at least.
Okay, let me start with saying I agree with you. It is a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. And I would like to see a free or as close to free college option in every state in the country as we can get.
Okay, free option. That's good. I think, yeah, having a way for people to go to get a college education for very low is good for a majority of people. Because at the end, well, I have to think about this, because then we get into this whole school choice problem where, you have the free version, there's still gonna be these vast differences between the people that like pay a lot of money to go to a school versus the free version. If you go to the free version, are you really getting anything at that point? I would argue you probably still are, depending on what you're learning. So I mean, there's still benefit there.
You know that, and I'm sure you know that the sort of suggested that college is way too expensive. That the price of college today, relative, I guess I had a figure from 1963, is 37 times higher. 37 times higher for a four-year college than in 1963. And just to give put that into context, $1,000 in 1963 would be worth, with inflation, $9,700 today, $9,700. So you've got the price of college has increased
Faster than inflation.
4 times, more or less, than inflation has over the course of the past 60 years, let's just call it, 59, I think. So I agree with you in terms of the Band-Aid on a bullet hole. In terms of the morality of having taxpayers pay for debt relief in some fashion, we do that every day. And we don't just do it for college students, we do it for people who buy homes, which of course is I think statistically even more of higher income people than those who.
Why is my pause not working? Yeah, the immoral thing just doesn't make sense to me. He would have to be against all taxes. Like, why? Well, actually, he wouldn't have to be against all taxes. I mean, you could say why it's immoral specifically, but he gave it like a blanket thing of being like paying for someone else's stuff against your own is unfair and immoral. But is it only unfair when it's for college? Like, why is it fair for other things? I guess maybe he'll
student debt relief, because we know that about 35% of those people, even though you're talking averages, you're not talking actual means, you're not talking individuals, 35% of them never get a college degree who have student debt. But in terms of homeowners, we give a mortgage interest deduction, which benefits.
That's not quite the same, though.
No, it's not this, but I mean, if I rent or I own a home, like, we encourage home ownership by giving a reduction in taxes. And that is in terms of the government, right? Which, if you look at the ledger, that means less money coming in than would otherwise come in because we give them a tax deduction.
Yes, but there's a moral difference, if I can just say, between letting people keep more, and I actually don't support the mortgage tax deduction, to be clear, but there's a pretty big moral distinction between letting people keep more of their own money and transferring money from one party to another.
So if you have a tax cut, you're saying you have this thing, therefore you get to keep the money you earned. Versus, hey, I don't know enough about how I really need to learn more about taxes in general. If there's a tax cut, is that money coming from somewhere else? Probably not. I guess it's just forfeit. It's just like, yeah, I guess it is just forfeit because it's pretty much the government paying you your money back, but you're just not taking it first. So yeah, I can see the moral difference there about what he would say is like me keeping my money versus increasing someone else's taxes to pay for it. So if I had the tax benefit of like getting $100, it's different than being like, hey, I made $1,000 and I was going to give you $100, but now you're saying I don't have to because of a benefit that I have, versus I made this much money, we're going to take $100 from some other person and give it to you through taxing them. Or because of that benefit that you have, we're now going to tax this other person an extra like $10. I can understand his difference there.
I just don't think they're real. It's kind of apples and oranges.
All right, I want to get to this whole thing you keep hitting with morality because we can talk about morality, but I think people could say it's immoral to benefit wealthy people who can afford a house as opposed to people who can't and rent.
Yeah, we're going to get into not semantics. We're going to get into this whole idea where like, well, what is moral? That's subjective. It's what people decide. So like, what foot do we stand on? When we fall into these part of arguments, I think you have to go down and just being like, you see it as immoral. Can we, one, substantiate that? Like, can you show me your line of thinking that leads you to being immoral? And if it is, I'll use that same line of thinking to like show you other things that you probably find moral, in which case you probably want to rethink your morality, or you're going to find everything immoral. Or I try to shift like, so you find this immoral. Well, let's kind of shift what makes it immoral, what makes it bad, what are the things you're looking at, and if we can try and change, like, well, what if this could happen? What if we did it this way? Could we make it moral? kind of a thing.
But I mean, morality is, we can get to the morality question. But we also do that we subsidize businesses all the time. I imagine you're also against that. I mean, so it's not.
Two wrongs don't make a right, though. We shouldn't do more bad things because we already do some bad things.
Well,
Sure.
I don't necessarily think those things are bad, and I do think sometimes, doing the same for one group of people as we do for another can balance out things. In fact, but we also, you don't agree with any type of government subsidies on anything except for K through 12. You're okay with that?
I mean, I'm a classical liberal, so I believe in a small role for government, national defense, interstate infrastructure, right? I'm not a full anarchist here. Education to some degree, right? The reason I view college is different.
Let me ask, just while we're there, how do you make that distinction between the education you get through K through 12 and the education you would get through, let's say, K through 16?
Well, the biggest difference is you're an adult versus a minor. The other one is the bare minimum that you need to participate in society. But college degrees, like I said, a lot of people still don't have them, and they earn you $1 million more on average over your lifetime, right? They're an investment in your future earning potential. And I think it's fair to ask people to pay off an investment.
I don't know if that number is true, but I have heard that you get a lot more
in themselves, rather than they get the huge increase in lifetime earnings, but other taxpayers who didn't go to college have to help pay for that. That's part of why I think it's pretty unfair.
Can I just say that I think that the $1 million average thing is a little bit misleading because it's the classic case of if Bill Gates and I walk into a room, the average wealth that we have is in the billions of dollars, and I can assure you that I do not have billions of dollars. So when we look at that, we have wealth inequality,
and that's why people normally want to go with the median. We want to look at like people above this threshold make over $50,000 and people below make less than $50,000. So if we were going the median, I'm curious what the median earning would be, because if the average is $1 million, the median is definitely less than $1 million. At least, not definitely. I would assume it's less than $1 million. And normally that would then take care of that. Then it would be like in Sam's example of like Bill Gates walks in, let's say he walks in a room with 10 people. Even with 10 people, the average is probably going to still be like around $1 billion or like hundreds of millions of dollars. And those 10 other people could be like Joe Schmoes that make fucking less than $50,000 a year. You would then say the median is, you would take the median point and then most people are below that number. Or the 50% of people are below that number, 50% of people are high that number, and that gives you a better idea. So like the median would be around $55,000, and be like, oh, most people, half of these people fall below, and the other half fall above.
Issue here, but we also know that like when you talk about the value of a college education accruing an extra $1 million in terms of a lot of that also has to do with wealthy people, right? Like I think you must observe this as well, that like depending on the college you go to and the money you have when you enter into that college, the value of that degree is actually enhanced by how wealthy you are when you enter into that college, because you get money, you get jobs by networking. I mean, this isn't a blanket statement, but in the main, not
really saying too much there. It's like if you are wealthy, someone who is wealthy that gains a positive benefit is still more benefited than someone who is unwealthy who gains that same positive, of course.
Fact of the matter is, wealthy people, if you control for college, make more money. If you're wealthy at age 18, you're going to be that much more wealthy at age 55, regardless if you control for college education or any other factors, simply because you swim in a sea of wealthy people. So my point is just that figure can be misleading in terms of.
There's another aspect to it, though, Sam. I think you're right. Obviously, it takes money to make money. There's some social capital. Like, not all of that's true. But on the other hand,
I'm not saying it takes money to make money. I'm saying that when you're from money, you end up making
social
more
networks.
Yeah,
sure. I'm sure that's true. It also matters a ton what you choose to study, though. And if you look at the different majors, they have huge differences in their starting salaries. And this is information that young people know going into their college when they're sophomores, they're choosing a major. They have this.
I'm a little iffy about how much they know that and how much. I don't know the average person. Maybe they do. I don't remember doing this when I went to college. Maybe I did. I don't know if people necessarily look at all the possible earnings they'll be getting when they look at that degree that they're trying to go for. Most people, I think, even when they go into college, they don't even know the degree they want. So I don't know about that.
Available to them. It is, I think, legally required, but I'm not 100% sure. But almost every college has this. Our graduates in this department earn this on average. And if you choose to study something like philosophy or poetry or anything, they might be very great things to study, right? But you know that the starting salary for that's going to be $40,000, $50,000. And you know we need STEM majors. So when you socialize the cost of education and you push it onto taxpayers with cancellation or with free college or whatever, you're removing that market incentive. If people actually had to pay for their own college and pay for their own student debt, it would drive more people to the in-demand areas like STEM because they pay more. And that's actually what we need. We need an educated workforce, but not all degrees are created equally. And we don't need more people in many different majors. Where there's in healthcare, in STEM, there's a huge shortage. But as soon as you take the costs and benefits away and push them on the taxpayers, you no longer have those market forces pushing us towards productivity.
So pretty much saying like if we remove this, anyone could go to these colleges and they're no longer be incentivized to go for the degrees that give them the most amount of money. So like if I want to go to college and I come from like I have less income, or I'm from like a low income family, then I'm more incentivized to take a degree or go for a degree that gives me more money. And the degree that gives me more money is normally more in demand with society. So if I remove that now, when I go in and I can go in for free or not have to worry about the loans or the debt forgiveness, and I come from a low income family, then all I have to do is look at, okay, what do I study? What do I do? What do I want to go into? That's a weird thing from a libertarian to come from, because I guess wouldn't you want someone to be more free to choose without some outside sources infecting them? Well, because now you're coming more from a standpoint of like, we want to do what's best for society. And what's best for society at that point is for those market forces to take effect so that we have those doctors, we have those STEM majors being able to take care of us. So which is it you want? And in any case, if that is removed, if that incentive is removed, the incentive of being able to pay off your loans is removed, we can give different incentives for people. We can try and make it easier and want more people to go into a field without telling them, hey, you can go into this for a huge burden of debt, but we'll relieve it for you, or you'll get a lot of money out of it. Maybe if you are able to get a degree. It doesn't help the people that still fall out, don't finish, and all that stuff.
And instead, people can study whatever they want. They can study for how many years they want. Another angle on this, Sam.
Well, hold on, let me just take you there, and then we'll get to that. Because in the world that you're talking about, only wealthy people would study art. Only wealthy people would study philosophy. Only wealthy people would study English. Only wealthy people would study civics. Only wealthy people would study archaeology or study anthropology. Or only wealthy people our humanities would only be dominated by people who enter into...
Because they no longer have that. There's no longer that incentive need for them to do those other jobs. Kind of what he was saying, where the incentive's no longer gone. So everyone would be as if they're wealthy.
College wealthy because they would be unencumbered by the concerns that you're talking about in terms of like, I need a return on investment here. I mean, you're talking about, just to be clear, I mean, and different people can have different opinions about this, but the society you're talking about is where we do not provide higher education to people who are anything but wealthy.
No, we are applying that's not what he's saying. We still have higher education for those people. It's just that they're incentivized to get degrees that they'll be able to pay off. In
terms of just being educated, right? Like you need to go in and really for you, higher education should be strictly vocational.
Investment.
Strictly vocational.
Oh, okay.
For the non.
That is what he's saying. Yeah, it is, because he doesn't think it should be covered. It is vocation because you get to choose whether or not you go there. And I'm guessing because he thinks that you're an adult at that point, while the pre through K thing, or the K through 12 thing, isn't a vocation because he thinks that is good for all society, and you're still a kid, so we can like force that on you.
Wealthy in this.
If your college degree isn't going to earn you enough to be able to pay for it, yeah, I think it's probably not a good idea. If it's not a good individual investment, I don't see why it would be a good societal investment. I mean, yeah, it's not that only wealthy people.
I just want to be clear. You don't think that there is value to society to have a wide range of socioeconomic people be teachers, or be archaeologists, or be social workers, or
they can still be those things. They're just let me give you an example.
They're just going to live in horrible.
Yeah, they can still be those things, but they're gonna be in huge debt.
I had a gym teacher in high school who went to
now he's gonna give like.
And just let me tell you, my public high school, I'm sure pays their gym teachers far less than they deserve to have to put up with kids like me, right? She shouldn't have gone to Brown to get a degree in physical education. I'm sure she's buried in debt. I've talked to her about it. She should have gone to Salem State in Massachusetts, where she could have gotten out with minimal debt. Or she should have gone to a community college and then a state school for 2 years to get that bachelor's degree.
She wanted to be a gym teacher when she entered Brown?
She chose to major in physical education, so I don't know what else.
I think that's a fair statement. In the sense of like, people, again, we're putting a lot of agency on someone who's still pretty young at 18, but they need some agency. But I don't know if they need that much. It's still, I feel so weird about telling someone, hey, you're 18, go put yourself in this like huge amount of debt. Hopefully you come out of it with a decent degree and you get a job that you'll be able to pay all that back. Good luck. I still feel a little weird about that. But I should, hopefully, if I'm going for a certain degree, if I know what I want to do, I shouldn't have to. If I'm in a bad situation, I'm not well off and I can't get into these certain schools, I shouldn't be putting myself in those situations. I don't think so. I mean, I think that's fair. Like there are other alternatives. We have other alternatives for you to go into these schools and come out with less debt. I think that's a fair thing to say.
else you'd go. I just,
I mean, physical therapy. Maybe she wanted to help kids. And I'm aware of Salem State. I'm from Worcester, and so
Oh, okay. I'm from Bellingham originally.
All right. Well, yeah, that's what I figured. Bellingham. I'm joking. But okay. So and I would imagine when she went to Brown, the cost of Brown was also significantly cheaper than it is.
Well, she's pretty young. She's not that much. She wasn't that much older, so I'm sure it was still pretty crazy expensive.
And so we should, in your perfect world, elite universities where you get exposed to different people and different ideas, and where you would have a commingling of socioeconomic strata. That's bad because the market doesn't favor that. We should not.
No, it's not that it's bad, Sam. So it's that we have to have one of two things. One, these universities like Harvard they give huge amounts of financial aid, first of all, and that's great. I'm not saying they shouldn't do that. Secondly, you could still go. All you have to do is go to a private bank, convince them to give you the loan, which they'll do looking at an ROI. Will you be able to pay this back? And we're not bailing out the banks in my scenario, so there's none of that happening.
We did do that, though. We do. I mean, now we own. I mean, as a government, we own a lot of debt that originated as private.
But I'm against that. And so what you have to do is you have to go to your private, because I think the federal student loan programs have been shown to really have jacked up the cost of college. Every dollar they give out in loans.
We'll get to that in a minute.
But I'm saying in a private system, it's not that low-income people or people
Hopefully you do talk about that, because I'm curious how they do
from
that.
modest beginnings wouldn't have access. It's that they would have to say, okay.
I guess the idea is, colleges knowing that the government's going to step in and give relief and or loans can jack up their prices, knowing that they have the government to fall back on for paying it, kind of a thing. I don't know. Is that it?
I'm going to go study engineering. A bank will give you a loan if there's a good chance you'll be able to pay it back.
Or maybe or maybe they're jacking it up because they're worried about the government just defaulting it or not paying it. Because what are they going to do if the government doesn't pay? Because if a bank does it, I don't know. Actually,
that would be a thing. Right now they're crowded out because the government does all the loans, and then taxpayers are ultimately probably going to be on the hook for a lot of it.
Okay, I mean, I think, to the extent that taxpayers are on the hook for all the tax cuts, I mean, that we have.
Tax cuts aren't the same. That's people keeping their money, Sam. It's not the same.
No, it's not their money. It's not your money.
Your money. The money you earn and get a tax cut on it's your money. You earned it.
Dude, that money's the U.S. government's money.
Not if they let you keep.
Pick up a piece of paper on your desk.
Okay.
Tear it. You are safe from the government coming after you. Now do that with a $5 bill. You're not allowed to do that. It's the government's money. We have it, they print it, and we have ownership for a period of time. But the fact is, it's the government's money.
I mean,
so you think everyone's incomes are actually just the government's money that they're going to let us decide how much to have? I think we have very different views of property rights, which I knew that coming in.
100%. And
I mean, the money is the people's. When I say the people's, the government. It is the government's money. We
also have a different view of what is valuable to society. In my mind, it is valuable to society to have an educated population, even if that is not measured in the amount of money that they earn.
Market signals are telling us what's in demand, what our society needs. We need more doctors. Right. We need more engineers. We don't need more English majors right now.
Again, I agree that allowing people, that does technically remove an incentive. Saying that you can go in for free, a college for free, and you don't have to worry about paying back the debt, does remove an incentive from people, like maybe picking a major that they know they'll be able to pay off. But we can give other incentives. That doesn't have to be the only incentive. We can create new incentives that aren't putting people into debt.
When we do, the salaries will go up.
But aren't you guys for human freedom and expression? Isn't that the big thing that folks
Absolutely. But pay for it yourself. You want to study English? Be my guest. I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to.
Wait a second. So you don't accept that money is a constraint on...
I guess, yeah. I don't know if Sam's going to bring it up. It's like, if there's outside sources that aren't a fault of your own, why, if you believe in true freedom of some sort, we want to try and negate those negative outcomes that are affecting you that you had no choice over. At least that's what I would understand true freedom to be from his perspective, is like being able to make choices aside from a bunch of outside sources affecting that choice without people forcing you to do something. And if you're coming from a bad background or a negative background with low-income family or something, and you're not able to go through it, that shouldn't stop you from making choices. It shouldn't. We should try and negate those effects that it has on you making choices. Certain choices, not all choices. Certain choices.
Freedom, while at the same time, you can't achieve. For instance, you're basically saying to me that if I want to be a social worker, or I want to be an archaeologist, if I don't have the money to do that, you think that society should not participate in any way in helping me achieve that goal?
No, you'll be able to get a loan if you're going to be able to earn enough.
Well, now I'm going to be saddled with
or you can go to community college.
Enormous debt I'll be saddled with.
College is practically free, right? Compared to, I mean, it costs extremely small amounts of money, and anyone can go to a community college for 2 years, get an associate's degree with almost no debt, then go to a public school, finish their bachelor's degree, sure, in archaeology, and then go to your public school. You'll have a little bit of debt if you do 2 years at a state public college, and you'll have a degree and go work. That's fine. I'm just not willing to pay for it. Sam, like, let me just get personal for a second.
That kind of gets where Sam would go, where he thinks that there should be a free version. So that community college would be the free version that he should think should be across the board. Everyone should have access to.
I went to the University of Massachusetts. You're a Massachusetts guy, right? Had a scholarship.
Oh, shit.
I could have gone to Boston College, right? I could have gone somewhere bougie. I worked from a week before my first year started as a security guard working nights, all to avoid debt, all right? I really, and I got out with very minimal debt. Turns out I'm a sucker, right? I should have taken it a lot easier, ran up 10K, and Uncle Joe would be making other people pay it off. And now I'm going to have to pay more in taxes.
Wait a second.
So that other people
you had
did
debt?
it.
You had debt, or you paid off your debt?
I very minimal debt, small amount, so far less.
Oh, so you did get some debt relief?
What?
You did
no,
get
it's
some...
paid off.
Oh, so you don't have any more debt?
I don't have debt. No, I don't have any student debt.
Okay. And so you resent that the other people are getting that debt. Do you own a home?
Because I have to pay for it.
No, I understand. Do you own a home?
I do.
Oh, okay. And what if someone says, I resent the fact that you pay your mortgage, like you decided to take this loan, and why do you get a tax deduction for it? Why does the U.S. government...
You asked me, vote yes or no, get rid of the tax deduction. I would say yes, get rid of it. So it's not a comparable example. You can't pin me.
Yeah, I mean, he is saying, he's being consistent in that manner, that he wouldn't be for it. He's saying it's bad.
Down for that. I don't support that, right? And also, again, that would be me keeping my own income more from this deduction, not getting somebody else's money to pay for my education. It's still apples. We're not going to see eye to eye on that, but it's still apples and oranges.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the government expends money on your public school education. The expenditure on this debt is the same thing. It's just happening afterwards.
It's taking from taxpayers and giving it to other people.
Right.
Whereas me getting a tax deduction is me keeping my own money. It's not me getting somebody else's money.
Well, but in terms of the government's ledger, it's the exact same thing. It's income that would otherwise been...
Yeah, sure. But it's morally different, I think.
Yeah. I mean, you have your set of morals, but again, your moral world is one in which only wealthy people deserve to go to the highest institutions of learning and have a free range as to what they can do.
No.
Poorer people are constrained by a return on investment.
Something productive will be able to go and pay it back, and we won't have society subsidizing people.
We just said the same thing.
Gender studies and then work at Starbucks.
Yes, we just said the same thing. It's just that you said it in a way that makes it sound less real than it is. The reality of what you're saying, that you need to have a return on investment, is that only people who are wealthy can afford to go into professions which have a income to debt ratio that would sink less wealthy people.
A poor person who's going to study engineering and gets a loan will still
I'm
be able
talking
to pay
about
it back.
professions that don't have an income to debt ratio. So for instance, if I go, like you say, you're a gym teacher who you think is an idiot because she didn't go to Salem State as opposed...
Okay, Sam's being a little calling his friend, saying that she's an idiot. It's a little rude.
Brown, you think that only wealthy
I don't think she's
people...
an idiot. I think that was a bad choice.
Okay, wealthy people can go to Brown and be a gym teacher or some other job that's not going to pay them. But people who are not wealthy, they got to go to Salem State.
They don't have to. He's being aggressive, but he's not saying that they have to. He's saying that it's a bad choice, which is kind of true. If I am going to rack up $100,000 of debt to become a barista at Starbucks, that's a bad choice. You shouldn't do that. You should not. Should you be allowed to do that? Maybe. I can see scenarios where I'd be like, no, we're not allowing you to do that. We're not going to let you shit on yourself like this unless we've determined that you are of sound mind of some sort. But it's not crazy to say that it's a bad idea to do that. And I don't think he's wrong in saying like it's a bad idea. You shouldn't do that. Should you be allowed to do it? He would probably say, yeah, you can do it. Just know that you're going to be fucking yourself.
Sure. Yes.
Okay. So we see.
My values start with pay your own way in life as much as possible. And you're saying that I have a human right to make other people pay for me to study basketball weaving at Brown and pay $70,000 a year.
Are you in favor of of the estate tax? Because your principle from the get-go is people should pay their way through society. So how about this? Can we agree on this? Students of wealthy families, their families cannot contribute to their education. They should pay their own way.
Why wouldn't they be able to do that?
Well, I was just going by.
He probably considers all family wealth. Like, he thinks you should pay your way without forcing other people to pay for you. It wouldn't be forcing to have my parents. Like, so if I came from a wealthy family, I'm not forcing my family to pay for me. If they want to spend their money, they should be able to spend their money any way they want. And that would be like paying me.
Your principle, which you have to pay your way. But if you have generational wealth, then that's okay too. So you can inherit money.
Sure. Yeah. Why wouldn't you be able to?
Well,
your family counts as paying your own way. Sure.
Oh, I see.
I mean, not everyone's equally lucky. Yeah, I agree. Because some people are born rich, some people are born poor. But yes, that's just reality.
It is reality, but
I know I've heard Sam talk about this, so I know where he's going to go down. And this is the same way I feel about it. that's the point of having different policies or having a government system that like looks at these inadequacies, and some of these inadequacies we can try and fix. We can try and put policy in place to like make it a more even playing field for everyone. So we look at inadequacies that some people have that were no fault of their own. No one chooses what family they're born into. No one chooses where they're born, like where their location they're born into, or what school their first school that they go into. People don't choose these things. And a bunch of that can have like a huge effect on your life. And we should be able to look at those and help people that have been put in those situations and be like, yo, it sucked. It's unfair that we went this way. Let's see what we can do to like remedy that, so that we can make it better for everyone.
How we decide as a society to address that disparity is actually just a choice. Your moral choices, luck will dictate people's trajectory through a life in society. My moral choice is that as a society.
Okay, being more fair to him, luck and personal responsibility, like luck and like what you're able to do. A bit of both, not just luck.
What we should be doing is attempting to allow everyone as much freedom in terms of how they actualize themselves. That's the more moral choice. That money
at somebody else's expense.
Yes, and because everything is at somebody else's expense. None of those people who inherited money from their families didn't do so at somebody else's expense. None of them. You think that wealth?
I don't know if he's going to go down the whole. Oh, he's going to go down the whole like socialist kind of talking points of being like any big millionaire person who makes a lot of money had to do it off the backs of other people's labor, which is, I mean, true. Yeah, I mean, no one who is super rich did it by themselves. No one. Absolutely not. And they only did it with like other. You can go down the whole infrastructure idea, where it's like the infrastructure in place by America that these people were born into gave them the possibility of even doing any of this. So they were building it off of someone else already. That's 100% true. You can't argue that.
You think that wealth can be created, intergenerational wealth that can be created, doesn't come at the expense of other people?
It depends how it was originally created, but a lot of economic interactions are not zero sum.
Well, give me an example of somebody who has, of a family that is worth $5 million that didn't do it at the expense of other people.
Sure, a businessman came up with a product, sold it to a bunch of people who were happy to pay the price.
Well, let's get a little bit more specific. Let's get a little more specific. This businessman, what kind of product is it? Is it a factory? I mean,
the guy who discovered buffalo wings. That's my favorite food. How about that? And then he was the first person to open up a shop selling buffalo wings. He sold them for a price. Everybody loved them, was happy to pay for them. He built a whole empire of buffalo sauce. Now it's in every store. He's made millions of people happy. They got a product.
So his trucks
go off. A bunch of money.
His trucks.
Oh, he's going the road. He's going with the roads.
Let's say a car doesn't. Subsidized by society, my tax dollars.
So he's focusing on the road thing right now, and it's kind of a meme for libertarians to talk about roads. But that's part of the infrastructure thing. The fact that he was able to get his product across state lines or across anywhere for the most part with trucks was because of the roads that were built off the backs of other people's labor and other people's like taxes. So he would not have been able to do that without the infrastructure already in place that he is benefiting from.
Drop those chicken wings at the chicken wing store. I mean, he's doing that with my cost. That's just one cost that's associated with it. The FDA or the USDA, which makes sure that I can trust that those chicken wings.
I don't know if he's for the FDA. I think the last libertarian I spoke to was against the FDA in general.
Things are not going to give me salmonella till we get cuts on that. That also enhances his business, right? I mean, all of this comes at the expense of other people. Never mind the idea of the workers who have produced, have used their labor for the production of this. But just based upon what society has given that person and how much value they got out of what society did. Like, I don't.
But they also pay taxes right back into the same roads. Lots of them, if they're making a multi-million-dollar business. So I don't understand.
But they don't pay taxes at the beginning. I mean, look, if you give me $100,000
payroll taxes as they go every day, all the time.
Well, those payroll taxes go to the workers' Social Security taxes, and Medicare. But that investment that existed before that guy started selling.
Yeah, existed before he existed. The infrastructure was there probably before that person was ever born.
Chicken wings, the roads, the infrastructure, all of what society has built before that guy was probably even born. Yeah. To invent chicken wings, all existed, and he could not have made a single dollar without those things. So there's nobody in our society.
I'm not arguing against roads, Sam.
Well, then you're not arguing. Then you're also okay with government investment in things that has created wealth for people. And this person also, undoubtedly, statistically speaking, if we're going to talk about averages, also benefited from the fact that, like, our society, both institutionally and in terms of government, allowed him to accrue wealth intergenerational wealth that certain groups of people weren't allowed to grow. I mean, just in terms of like housing and whatnot.
Yeah. No, I understand. I understand that intergenerational wealth for a long time in the Black community and other communities was blocked. But to me, the answer isn't to block anyone's creation of intergenerational wealth. It's to open up opportunity to more people. And I guess this idea that because I think roads should exist, I therefore have to support any kind of expenditure into somebody else that's an indirect
But we were just
investment.
talking about the principle of morality. I mean, I don't usually talk in terms of morality when we talk about policy but if you're going to talk about the morality of some people contributing to the success of other people, my tax dollars going towards like somebody who's at public school, if my kids are at private school or something, if you're saying that's immoral, then roads, you are implicating roads. You're implicating all of society's infrastructure.
I'm saying that it is immoral to an investment that's going to make somebody a lot more money over their lifetime. Other people get to pay for it.
So the fact that he capped it at $125,000.
Okay, and this is where I said at the beginning, where like this is where I would hit on first. If we're talking about the immoral things, like can we find scenarios where it is okay? So he just said specifically, giving this benefit to people who are going to re-earn this money anyways. That's immoral. Okay, well, what about people that aren't going to do that? What about people that dropped out, people that like have low incomes, that aren't in the degrees that they went in for, that maybe just made a bad investment, stuff like that? What about those people?
Well, so it's really capped at $250 though, because if you're married, say I'm a lawyer who earns $230,000 and my husband is a stay-at-home husband or my wife is a stay-at-home wife, I'm getting debt relief. So it's capped. And listen, a full student debt cancellation without caps would be a lot worse. Full student debt cancellation gives 6 times more benefit to the top 20% than the bottom 20%. Biden's isn't nearly as bad because of the income cap. I'll give you that.
We have 35% of people who never graduated, who never got that degree, who have student debt.
Yeah, what about those people?
Still do earn more though than high school grads. Some college has a higher
but not
earnings than college.
I don't think it's a lot more.
How much? Well, actually, like 12%. Okay. Would you be okay with getting rid of all of their debt? Is that the issue, that you don't want to give it to people who you presume are making more money regardless of their income debt ratio?
I think it would make more sense, and I'm not even saying I support this, but it would make more sense to say we're simply going to give everybody that earns less than $75,000 $10,000 to do what they want with, or whatever the income threshold is, than to only condition it around college, as if, the janitor does.
I wouldn't want to put. I want to put a what's it called? A bad faith interpretation of why they chose 125K. I don't want to assume that. I fall more on the lines of when choosing between some people benefiting from some people getting benefit that don't need it versus some people not getting the benefit because they slipped through the cracks. I'd rather get more people. That way we get more of the people that definitely need it. Because if the lower you make it, there are going to be people that fall through the cracks that probably did need it more. At the end of the day, that's going to happen. The more strict you make it. You probably didn't see at the beginning. I kind of am more on the fence about like that 125 limit. It seems kind of much. And I think one article we read about it said that like most of it is still going to the upper. I want to say most 70% of the money of the relief would be going to the upper 60% of people of that field. So people that make like probably closer to $70,000 or more, which I think is kind of rough. I think that's kind of rough.
Doesn't have credit card debt or medical debt that he would need money for. That's the whole problem I have. Is if you just want to give out money, let's why college grads? The reason why, if we're being honest, Sam, is because college graduates and student debt holders and young people, these are Democrat voters, and they're trying to rile them out before. It's a political thing. It's clientelism. We all know this. We don't have. We can pretend.
You don't think that there? Don't think that there are any Republican?
When we were reading the articles, I was thinking something super similar, where if you're being very cynical about this, people are going to say that this is coming from, hey, midterms are coming up. This is specifically focusing on, what was it? The article was talking about like why versus all the versions of debt that people have. Why are we focusing on college debt? And I said from a cynical standpoint, people are probably going to look at college debt because of, what am I saying? Oh yeah, people are probably going to look at college debt because these are younger people more likely. It is college graduates most likely, or people who have gone to college with higher education. And normally, when you look at those factors, they're more likely to vote Democrat. So if you're looking from a cynical standpoint, it's like, oh, let's just fucking give money to our people that are going to vote for us and like remind them that, hey, this was us. That's a cynical way of looking at it. At the same time, as I mentioned before, they're the ones in power right now. Those are their constituents. And that is what the constituents want. A lot of people do want some form of relief for college. Now, whether or not it's a good policy, whether or not it's a good idea, that's different. But the people who voted them in do want this in some manner. So I don't know if it's saying that slimy or if it's like underhanded for them to do it when that is what the people that voted them in want. You can say that it's a bad policy and that people who want it are dumb, but I wouldn't hold them as like, it's not an underhanded tactic, I would say.
Republican college
I'm
grads?
sure there are, but it's the majority. I mean, it's a younger demographic. It's a more educated demographic. These are people that vote much more for Democrats. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
Look at Pew, look at Gallup. You know this.
I think that there is. I think that you could argue that the reason why there was the political strength to do this was because of the Democratic electorate. Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that.
And the timing. Come on, we're a couple months before the midterms. Biden's struggling.
I mean, to be fair,
I'm going to give out some money, give free money to my voters.
Let's also be clear. Let's make a distinction. When we talk about $10,000 in student debt, we're not actually talking about $10,000 that is expended by the government. I mean, this involves also interest, right? I mean, so the idea of the U.S. government making money on the education of its citizens, to me, that's immoral.
But a lot of it's given at below market subsidized rates. There are unsubsidized ones as well, but a lot of them are subsidized rates. The loans. There's two types of Stratford loans, subsidized and unsubsidized. The unsubsidized, what you're saying would apply to, but the subsidized ones are given specifically at below market rates, much more affordable than you get from a private bank.
Well, that may be more affordable, but it's still interest. Interest is still interest. 6% interest is less than 12% interest, but it's still interest.
Sure.
Right. So, I mean, my point being that when we say $10,000 in terms of, you said hand out $10,000 to student loan debt holders, it's not actually giving them $10,000 from the perspective of the government. It's actually just giving them, in many cases, maybe $5,000 and then $5,000 of interest that is accrued that was never expended or collected from taxpayers.
Well, a lot of the interest has actually been forgiven over the last 2 years slowly, but it would really vary wildly case to case.
There was a moratorium on it, but yes.
Yes, and as the moratorium went, the interest payments that were being accrued were waived completely, and the biggest beneficiary.
If anything, just make student loans interest free because people don't actually understand loans. Yeah, I can see that being okay with government loans. I don't know how I'd feel about forcing. If I take a loan out at a bank, I don't know if they're going to say like, "Oh, you're doing this for student loan." Yeah, we just won't put any interest on it. But from a government standpoint, I can understand that.
Areas of that were doctors and lawyers, actually, according to the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. So, I mean, the interest thing will vary a lot.
Didn't you say we need more doctors?
Yes, and they should pay for it. I don't think they need subsidies.
But wait a second. Didn't you just say earlier that we need more doctors and society should make it easy and encourage that? So why isn't the market working?
It is. That's why doctors earn 200, 300 grand. Heart surgeons earn $500,000 because we need more.
Well, no. The market working. So they're increasing the wages. The market's doing what he's saying. The market's doing what it's doing by increasing the wages, which hopefully will lead to more people wanting to become doctors.
Okay, but we need more of them. But they're making so much money, and their debt is not in any way inhibiting them. So why don't we have more of them? I mean, isn't that the way it works, according to you?
Well, you know, our healthcare system is far from a free market, right? It's not the kind of model I'd advocate for. There's many layers of bureaucracy and regulation and government in there, but we do have huge demand to go into medical school. I mean, there's a reason these places.
So if there's huge demand already, then it sounds like we don't need. It sounds like we don't need this demand of what's it called? If there's huge demand already, we don't need this demand of like people who, oh, I'm only going to go in, but I don't want to take up so much debt, so I guess I'll become a doctor so I can make sure that I can pay off the debt I get.
Wait a second. So for this system that you're talking about to work with doctors, we also have to what? Get rid of like Medicare? Well, you just said. Why I asked you? Why isn't you said? Let me just see if I got this straight. You said to me that we shouldn't be paying doctors because we shouldn't be providing any debt.
Any doctor. They can pay it back when they're earning 300 grand.
I understand. And you're saying, but we still have a deficit of doctors.
Which, to be fair, as of now, I kind of lean on. If you're getting so much money, if you're making so much money, I don't think you should necessarily get. I mean, we all agree on this technically. Like, we're looking at people. That's why they put a cap on it. That's why they put 125 cap on it, anyways. Sure, and I think they mentioned that earlier. I think they're gonna talk about it here later about that. About the giving incentives. Since colleges are at the end of the day going to pay for some of this, they can colleges can charge more. One thing though to note with this policy, not specifically the debt relief, but part of Biden's policy is to try and cap how much money colleges can charge for certain things. So that was they didn't go into great detail about how they were going to do that. One thing that they mentioned was just at least giving more information about like forcing some colleges that were kind of cagey about how much money you were expected to get from a degree or how much debt you were expected to going for this degree, making that much more reliable for people to make better choices. But they are trying to camp out or chop out areas where colleges can't charge so much for their for their degrees
in this country, despite the fact that according to your calculation, they should be making money hand over fist. And in your world, that's how people enter the market works. If you're going to make a lot of money, it'll attract more people, but it's not working. And you're saying the reason that's not working is because of government regulation and socialized medicine in this country.
Well, part of it is actually limiting the number of med school seats, which I think is done at the behest of the AMA. But we're getting into terrain here where I'm not 100%.
But that's not government. I mean,
you said it's regulatory.
You said government. You said government regulation and socialized medicine, and the biggest socialized medicine we have is Medicare, to the extent that it's socialized. It's really socialized insurance. But be that as it may. But so, are you suggesting for the market to work with doctors, we need to get rid of Medicare?
Well, look, healthcare policy is a whole other thing. I don't necessarily know the answer to that question. But what I will say is this: for you to say the market should be working, one, it is. We're getting a lot more doctors, a lot more people want to go. But right now, we already are. It's not a market in terms of what degrees that people are getting. It's vastly subsidized. People are betting on their loans getting canceled, especially after this. So they'll go into the poetry degree.
I'm actually curious if there was a big uptick. I definitely know there's people like joking about it 100% back when Biden was like, back when Biden first won, of people hoping, like, caging out like, oh, maybe my loans will get forgiven or my debt will be relieved. But I don't know if there was a huge uptick of people like banking on that. I know it was a joke. I know people were joking about it though. So I remember hearing even some of my friends say that.
Wait. You're telling me that people have been betting on getting their loans canceled up to this point?
Oh, absolutely. I was just in college a few years ago.
I don't know if that was a huge thing. I don't know if this is a huge thing that's been going on. Like a vast number of people, maybe a small percentage of people that went to college were like, oh yeah, I'm going to go in now banking that Biden's going to cancel my debt. I don't know if that's true.
Ago. But with Bernie almost winning the nomination twice, the Democrat Party moving from completely opposing cancellation to now being many of them all in on it, even the moderates partially in on it, absolutely. Young people are taking out debt today.
All right, definitely.
They don't expect to ever have to pay back.
That's fascinating. Do you have any data to back that up other than the anecdotes that you amassed?
Not off the top of my head, but I mean, there's a reason it's continued to skyrocket. I mean, I personally advised friends, and even though I'm against the cancellation, right, I knew it was going to happen, at least to some extent. So I'm like, yeah, take some loans, because the worst thing
more is going to get canceled?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Because think about it, it's just a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. Within, I think it's 8 years, I don't know off the top of my head, we'll be right back at 1.6 trillion in student loan debt. Of course they're going to say, you can't just say they're not fixing the system. They're not making college.
They are talking about trying to make more changes to make it more affordable and easier for people to pay off loans or it to be relieved after turnaround time. That is part of their policy as well. They are talking about doing that. So yes, this initial relief is just a Band-Aid, but they are talking about trying to make it easier for people to get loans, pay back their loans, and easier, more affordable monthly payments, and also like relieve those after a while. After like 10 years or something, I think they said.
They're just canceling the tip of the iceberg.
Okay,
they're going to be back demanding more taxpayer money go to this in like 2 minutes.
Also, tip of the iceberg is like, I think people were estimating that this is going to be like 500 billion, maybe upwards of 500 billion. That's out of 1.7. I want to say that's upper. I mean, it's a good chunk. It's a good chunk.
I mean, I hope you're right. And we should also say that in terms of STEM, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there are more STEM graduates than there are STEM jobs. So I'm not sure what the specific special sauce is for you to go to school. Now, remember too, right? Like, I mean, if we're talking also graduate school, can you to predict, since you've also had the ability to predict that we're going to get more student debt relief, what's going to be the top 5 paying jobs 10 years out from now? I'm a 17. My daughter's looking at colleges. Okay, it's going to cost a lot of money. What should she go into right now? Also contemplate graduate school. That is going to be
true. I would be interested to see if the market, the way that he's viewing the market is like, hey, we increase the value of jobs depending on what's needed. And that way, when you go into school, you can look at like, oh, well, I'm going to be in a lot of debt. I'll go for this degree knowing that I'll get this much of money. I'm curious how often the market swings. I would assume probably not that much. I would hope that someone going in for a 4-year degree for something, the earnings potential of that degree isn't going to vastly swing. It's possible. It is possible that could like vastly like it could jump. Meaning like originally I was planning on getting a degree that would like earn me maybe like around a $75,000 income at the very beginning of my first job. But if that could swing down to like 40 grand, that's a big jump. And if that happened, would you be okay with us helping those people that are now in that situation where they went in, looking at that market perspective, and then came out, the market's changed?
The best top 5 rate of return on the
computer science, coding, no doubt. She'll be making bank. Yes.
Coding. Okay.
Oh yeah, the guys at UMass, right, which is a public school. My friends who were in coding, they were getting 6-figure job offers
but now you're
from
looking,
the first day.
Yeah, now you're looking backwards. But you
backwards
believe,
like 3 years.
Okay, but you anticipate that 8-10 years out, coding is going to be the biggest profession. Now, what if this show's not quite that big, but what if everybody was to go into coding?
Well, we've had something happen with this, like with lawyers, actually, a little bit, where there was kind of a glut in terms of more people going into law school than there were legal jobs because the salaries are really high and because the law schools were admitting tons of students. And it will adjust, right? If all of a sudden we have more, but I agree with you.
But what about those people? What about those people in that adjustment period?
But it will adjust. But I mean, you're telling me that a 17 or 18-year-old should be making wiser decisions about what they're going to go into. And if it adjusts, they're going to get screwed. So do those.
Yeah, and this is where I came back with, like, I still feel iffy about telling an 18-year-old, sure, they're kind of an adult. There's still some things they're not able to do even in our society. They're kind of an adult. And we're telling them, hey, I need you to make a huge decision for something that could affect the rest of your life. That still feels really weird to me.
People, do we give debt relief or no? It's just luck of the draw again.
I mean, I think if we want to talk about very targeted, specific things, we can talk about it. It would really depend. But it's not as if computer science jobs aren't going to be here 10 years. Like, we can predict with a good degree of certainty, we're going to need nurses, we're going to need doctors, we're going to need coders. You don't think
that coding is going to, there's an opportunity for coding maybe to get offshored?
We're booming in our coding centers.
What's the average? What's the average? What would you say the average is? I live in Brooklyn. What's the average per year for your coder?
Right out of college, honestly, I don't know, but I would bet my hat it's six figures, right?
I don't know if it's six figures. I think it's upper.
I studied economics, which is the
best
like
upper
ROI
75.
on any of the social sciences. However,
70.
A lot of my friends were in the coding department, and I'm just telling you, everyone wanted to get into this department and couldn't, and was applying and trying because there were only so many seats at the school. They had no shortage of high-paying job opportunities. The idea that they're going to get, some of them are going to get debt relief, right? They're fresh graduates, they're making 130, they'll qualify. It's obscene. It's absurd. These people are going to be making, they're going to be millionaires by the time they're 35, some of them, and they are going to get some taxpayer relief right now.
Some are, but the vast majority
none of them are going to be poor. None of them are going to be working class.
For the vast majority. Well, no, I agree that except for that 35% who didn't get the degree, the college degree, and probably more out of those, this does not target exclusively working class people.
That's what bothers me, though, Sam. On your side, the progressives, they frame it like we care about the working class, we care about the poor. Student debt relief mostly targets the middle and upper middle, a relatively affluent, educated.
That's simply not true. I mean, it definitely captures people who are making $125,000.
Yeah, it definitely. I don't know why you say that's not true. Targeting student loan, I think, does hit most of the people that are more likely to pay off their debt. Like, out of all the debt that you could choose again, student loans are something where, like, this is a big investment that you're putting towards that hopefully will pay off in the end. Now, I think the only thing to go against that is just be like, well, let's just focus on the people that did not get that benefit. Like, sure, there's incentive there, and if you do it and you're able to succeed and then get a good job after, then okay, well, you don't get the relief now because you don't need it. You don't need it. You got the job you want. You're way well off now. You're fucking great. So you're awesome. But now the people that don't get that benefit, either after a certain amount of years of graduating, they don't have a position where they're actually getting that amount of money that was associated with their degree, or that have dropped out. Well, then maybe we need to fucking like help them out.
$1,000, and I'm sure there are some families where the individual is making more than that and supporting both his or her spouse or living partner. I imagine if that second person is not working, they probably have kids.
Sam, do you support, not Biden's plan with the income caps, do you support canceling all student debt?
I would go up to $50,000.
Okay, well, that just so you know.
It would go up to 50,000. Oh, okay. Flat for everyone? I'm curious if he would say that. 50,000 up for everyone.
No, look at any analysis. 50,000 per borrower with no income caps would be vastly regressive. It would be the Trump tax cuts and everything you say you hate. But it's a soft spot for progressives where they don't live out their values.
Yes. I know,
that seems weird. Yeah, 50,000 for everyone. That I don't know. I don't know about that. I think I would much more focus on the people at the lower ends that definitely need it way more.
Also, would
that seems
make
a bit much for
free
me.
College option in every state. I mean, since we're
free as in taxpayers pay for it.
Yeah.
And as of now, I kind of agree. There should be a free option in some manner. Yeah, I have to look more into it. I definitely believe that the people in, like I said, people that have like college degrees are already, like, most of them, a good portion of them are very well off. They're in a good situation. Of course, there's still a lot of people that are there that are in shitty situations that probably do need this relief, and that's what we should focus on. So a blanket one, I'm not. I wouldn't be.
As in the same way that taxpayers pay for K through 12, I would make it K through 16. And you know what I would do? I would raise taxes so that those wealthy people who got the benefit of the $50,000 debt relief end up paying on the back end even more.
You can't fund all this with just taxes.
Okay. Okay. I mean, technically, if the rich people that benefit from that 50K are paying more in taxes, that over offsets it. Maybe I am okay with that at that point.
The rich.
Well, oh, no. I can. I definitely can.
Sam,
In fact, not only would I tax the income, I would come for the wealth.
Right,
I would
flee very quickly. Wealth taxes haven't worked out very well in Europe, have they? Most countries have repealed them.
Well, then good luck to those people.
Just chase all the wealth out of our country.
Okay, I didn't read up on this, so I can't comment on the wealth tax.
I'm not worried about those billionaires. I would take since we're getting my wish list, not only would I get their $50,000, and I'll tell you why. Because if you want to talk about government efficiency, I know you guys like the idea of a smaller government and a less bureaucracy. This creates less bureaucracy. Everybody gets $50,000 debt relief, and then I collect that money.
So yeah, he's going on the route. I mean, kind of. I don't know how I feel about when people say that. Like, if you make things mean tested, there's going to be more bureaucracy because we have to go through these set of things that are going to require people to check them and like go through, and there's going to be these processes and everything. I understand all that, but hopefully us doing that offsets any issues of like, because we're focusing on those direct people that actually need it. So of course there's more bureaucracy, but I think that's not, having more bureaucracy isn't necessarily a bad thing.
On the other end, because I already have an apparatus set up to do it. The only thing I got to do is change two numbers. I got to change 10,000 to 50,000, and then I got to change the top marginal rate, where I think it's and I would maybe three numbers because I would do capital gains as well, and I would push that up to where it was in the 50s and 60s in this country, which is around every dollar you make over 3 million.
Isn't it like? I'm gonna guess here. I think it was really high. I want to say it was like above 70%, maybe even 90%. Was it 90%?
We're going to take 90 cents of it. That's what
90 cents? Yeah, 90%. Okay.
What the rate was
terrible idea.
In the 40s and
again, I'm coming from I have to reread up on that stuff. Depending on the amount of money you're getting. Okay. I'm pretty pro taxes, guys. Just so you know. I'm pretty pro taxes. But I would have to look way more into what people say about like what kind of a tax rate at that much for people making a certain amount of money would have an effect on us. I would have to read way more into that. But instinctually, how I do feel about it, just from like a very ignorant standpoint right now, I'm not necessarily against it.
Sam, let me ask you a question, right? Why do we tax cigarettes? Because when you put a tax on something, you get less of it, and cigarette smoking is bad for your health. You want to put a tax on productive investments, income, and wealth. Those are things we should want more of in our country, not less. And you're talking about 90% taxes on income.
First of all, I dispute the fact that it's productive, that capital gains.
It's a definition of a capital gain.
No, it isn't.
A return on a productive investment.
What's productive about you investing in the stock market?
Well, it's indirect, but what stocks go up and what stocks go down, what businesses perform well.
Explain to me the indirectness of when you buy stocks. You buy 100 shares of Apple, and it goes up 5 points, and you make this chunk of money. What's productive about that investment?
The fact that Apple is worth more as a company because it's getting bigger, it's growing, is why the stock goes up. If you bought Amazon in 1985 or whatever.
Productive? No. You're telling me that Apple's value is reflected in its stock, but I'm asking your $100, which Apple doesn't see. What's the productive value in that? What is Apple producing more for society than it would have otherwise?
Because the reason that the stock is going up is because the company is performing well.
Yeah, so the stock is reflective of how the company is doing, but you,
right, and by investing in it, you're picking the productive companies. We're rewarding that with capital
You're just
gain.
betting. That's like me saying, like, when I bet on a horse and it wins, I made it run faster.
It's a little different when it's an investment.
But it's not an investment.
I guess, yeah, what is again, I did not look into this before this one. I just read up on the debt relief thing. So now they're talking about fucking this shit. I don't know. I am curious now. I would have to look into that. I am curious when people buy stocks into things, if that money's not going for the company and all it, I have to double check. I'm not gonna comment. Not gonna comment.
That's not to a company.
What is a company going public?
Selling off their stock.
In return
money.
for what? What do they do with it?
What do they do with that money? They put it into the shareholders. Yeah. They buy more stock, often stock buybacks. They offshore that cash.
I guess if what he's saying is if that money goes back to some of the people at the end of the day, like, so the people who have that company can then sell, because they normally have their own shares, and they can sell those versus the market value for those shares. That makes sense, because now you're incentivized to make your company better for people to put money on it, because if people put money on it, it raises its value, and then when the value raises, now you have more value because you can sell those shares. That I guess that makes sense to me. Like, at least from what he kind of just explained it. So like it incentivizes me as part of a company or in the company. If I have ownership of some of those shares, I want to do better for my company so that people will then put money into my stock. And then when that goes, the value rises, and now I have more value because of my shares. And then I can sell those if I ever want to or need to.
Billions upon billions of dollars.
They also invest it a lot.
Well, if they have that much cash reserves, they don't need that money. And so your investment is not really that productive. But so let me ask you this. What makes you think if the government takes that money and redistributes it, that as a society, we have less wealth? I mean, what's the difference in terms of societal wealth? If let me put it this way, you walk into the room and I walk into the room, or Bill Gates and I walk into the room. If the government takes $1 billion from Bill Gates and gives it to me, the wealth in that room is exactly the same as it was when Bill Gates and I entered.
But future wealth creation is going to go to crap. I mean, if a billionaire can create a super productive company for millions of people and then have all their wealth confiscated, the next one's not going to do it. When 90% tax rate over $3 million is what you said.
Why didn't that work in Kansas?
You mentioned Kansas. Fuck. Before he goes into the Kansas thing, I guess I could see. I 100% agree with this idea. Like, why would I can definitely understand the idea of like, why would I do this thing if someone could just take my money from me? So like, if I could become a billionaire and then just be stripped away from me by the government and given to someone else for whatever, I agree that could be disincentive. Of course, that could be a disincentivize someone from doing that. From reaching a certain level, it could disincentivize them from like keep pushing and pushing and pushing. But if you keep pushing and pushing and pushing, sure, you'll be losing. They'll be taking more and more money, but you're still gaining more than what you had. So like, if I had $10 and they took $5, and then if I had $15 and they took $5, at the end of the day, if I had the 15, I'm still left with 10 versus 5. So like, if I keep pushing and pushing and pushing, sure, they're going to take more and more and more, but I'm still gaining more and more as well. Also, it could disincentivize people at the top in some manners, like once they reach that threshold. But then people at the bottom, now if they have that money, they are more incentivized and have the ability to also make things as well that they weren't able to, that they wouldn't have been able to be productive at. So maybe having someone be like, someone could reach a level of productivity that them gaining more productivity isn't as great of a value as someone at the lower end gaining maybe a different amount of productivity. Kind of. I know I probably said that weird, but that's where I could see like how that would still like kind of equal out and be okay.
In Kansas,
Sam Brown.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the Kansas experiment, but that's a whole complicated thing that we would need a whole. I'll come back on if you want to dive into that.
The Laffer, it was Art Laffer. You're stating the Laffer curve to me. You're suggesting
the Laffer curve isn't always true. It's true at a certain point. Obviously, 100% tax would raise.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not for
100% tax.
I'm not for 100%.
You're just for a 90.
90% over the first $3 million, which is what we had
Jeff Bezos
in the
would have
50s.
stopped. In what, 1998?
Well, I don't see. He says he would have stopped. I don't know if he would have stopped. Why? Because there's still an incentive to get more and more. You're still getting more money. You're earning way less, but you're still earning more than what you would have had if you just stop.
None of us would have the amnesty because he would have earned $3 million. What's he going to do? Keep going for 10%? Of course not. This is incentives 101.
Why not?
Would you work if you were going to pay 90% taxes for everything you did after a certain point?
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I'd stay home. I'd sunbathe.
No, if I made $3 million, but you know what I would do if I was Jeff Bezos? I would have probably retired after my first billion.
Well,
wouldn't you have?
Probably not, but I'm not really.
Well, you can't spend $1 billion. You can't. So I mean, the Laffer curve. The Laffer curve.
Millions of jobs, delivers things to our doorsteps more affordably and quicker than anyone could have imagined.
But you're arguing that he would have stopped doing that if he wasn't making as much money, and I'm arguing that I don't think he would have stopped because he still wants to be.
They still want money. It's just like I'm always amazed by. I love soccer.
But they don't.
Soccer.
Yeah, wait. He still wants money. But if he still wants money, that's the argument I think Sam's saying is like he still wants more money, so that even though he's earning less, he's still getting more than if he would just stop. If he just stopped, he's not gaining anything anymore.
How they'll make a deal, they'll make a trade for like my salary will go from 50 million to 75 million. I'm like, what's the practical difference? It seems crazy, but it's how people work. It is.
I think you could say he probably wouldn't stop, but he probably wouldn't be as driven maybe to continue as hard. He probably wouldn't go as hard, or maybe he would go harder. Maybe he would go harder. Thinking he's like, well, I need to offset this difference.
How people are motivated.
Well, probably not. I do lean more thinking that he probably wouldn't try as hard.
It is not a practical difference, and you can still make more money than the next person. It's just
they're still motivated by it. It's just
what happened in the 50s and the 60s in this country? Why didn't what you're suggesting? Why didn't all of those people? You know what the tax rate was in the 50s, right?
On the income tax?
Yeah.
Wasn't it as high as 70% at one point?
It was 90%.
But almost no
Over
one paid
four-
it back then, though. The
over
brackets, almost
four-
nobody was in the
that's
brackets.
not true.
Sam.
400,000,
Way less than would be today.
$450,000. Every dollar you would make over that, 90 cents on the dollar. That existed for almost 20 years in this country. And then in
shit, I didn't know it was
65,
that
I think it was, 64, somewhere between 64 and 65, it went to 75% on every dollar made over $470,000 annually.
That's obscene. That's immoral.
But, well, okay, you can say it's immoral, but it's
Yeah, so now he's fighting back on the immoral thing, but Sam's going to hit back and being like, yeah, sure, you can think it's immoral, but we're not seeing the negative outcomes that you said, or we didn't see, which I don't know the 70s that much, so, or the 60s, so I can't say whether or not that's true, but I'm assuming that Sam's what he's going to say.
not ineffective. We still had things produced. It was a very productive time. And in fact, we had a rising middle class, didn't we? It was called the Great Compression because we had wealth inequality was at its lowest ebb. Maybe
There's
at
like
any
a
other
million
time.
different
But
things
you
that are
think
different from
that's
2020 to
immoral.
1960. Sam.
Well, of course, but
I
you
do
think that's
taking
immoral.
90 cents out of a dollar. I mean, what's 100 cents? But if you have to work for free, I mean, that's at that point like.
Well, I know that
indentured
there are people who
servitude.
like to accumulate things, and so they can have that 10%.
Oh, they can. Oh, thank you. That's very generous of you to let them keep 10 cents of their own
You're
dollar.
welcome.
You're very kind, Sam.
I think so. I think so. I may be even. I may be able to move off that to 11%.
Okay.
Right. So, what is your solution for all
funny.
this?
For the cost of college?
Yeah, I mean,
Well-
you've made it clear that you do not think that people who don't have existing wealth should have as much opportunity to go to a top.
He's using a weird word there, opportunity. He thinks the opportunity should still be there, but there's going to be the added risk because you come from a lower income, a lower household income. So there's added risk. You still have the same. He would probably say same opportunity because he's saying like you still can go do it, but it's like, can you really if you're going to rack up $100,000 of debt and you have like come from a family that makes less than $50,000 a year?
College or a college of their choice. They should have a limited a menu of colleges
Not limited. They can still do it. It's just going to be harder.
that they go to. If they want to
should have
go
to get a
into
private loan.
if they want to go into a profession that is not going to pay a lot of money, that's a fair assessment of your position, right? That's
It's not very
moral
charitably
universe.
stated, but sure.
Yeah, it's
Well,
not.
but that's reality.
It's
I mean,
not
that is the real.
charity.
That's the reality.
It's a
of it.
spin on it. Alternatively, I could say that everyone has the right to pursue a college investment of whatever they like. They simply can't force other people to pay for unproductive investments. I could put my spin on it.
Society should not enable people to do anything that isn't going to give them a return, and only
Yes.
wealthy people will be able to afford. The reality is that only wealthy
Wealthy people want to waste their money. That is their right.
Right. Okay. Well, it's not a waste to them because they don't have the same.
I think it's a waste. They don't have to agree.
Well,
I agree.
know,
That's their right.
but the fact is that if I'm wealthy, if I've gotten millions of dollars from my parents, and I know that's coming, I can live a very, very good life, and I can dabble around. Maybe I can be a teacher. Maybe I can be.
It doesn't make your English degree a positive ROI,
Yeah.
but you can absorb that loss and still be rich. Sure.
Right. Okay. Right. Only those rich kids can see the value, though, of a humanities degree. Wealthy people would just be largely more educated in the humanities. That's the result of what you're talking about, right?
I think most humanities education at colleges in America today has become a joke. So if they want that, okay.
Okay. I mean, and you know this because of your economics degree.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've studied all about grade inflation, the absolute state of the modern academy. I mean, the rigor. There are some really depressing studies. Brian Kaplan has a whole book where he shows that like I don't have it all in front of me, but the percentage of people who 5 years out from college report no increase in critical thinking, reading, and writing skills on a test from before college when they studied liberal arts. It's a shockingly high percentage.
Is there value in that?
Is there value in what?
In people having those critical thinking skills?
Absolutely, but these degrees aren't providing it in large percentages of the time.
So you do see a value in critical thinking skills, but that's not necessarily a return on investment. I'm just.
I don't know where Sam's going to go with this, but he was just saying, unless I misheard, he was saying like people who get these degrees aren't getting even that benefit from it. Like, even if you want to say that going to college is good for those critical thinking skills, even though it might lead to them not having a great a great job afterwards that's going to give them a lot of money, at least they're leaving with those skills. And I think he's saying like, well, no, they're not even getting that benefit. I think that's what, I forget this guy's name already. The guy on the left, not Sam. I think that's what he's saying.
You're basically saying
for a lot
like
of jobs.
the food sucks here and the portions are too small. I mean, because if you think there's value in
Well, I am
critical
a big
thinking,
believer in big portions.
right? But if you think there is value in critical thinking, that's different than saying there's value in an education because it gives you dollar return. You're sort of
Critical thinking is
arguing
an
what I'm
essential
arguing.
component in many jobs, lawyers, the LSAT, all this stuff. So
No, I
yeah, it
understand.
is, but those degrees aren't
But
providing
not
much of it
necessarily in
many
selling
cases.
cars. You can make a ton of money in
Why
selling
should you
cars.
need a college degree to sell cars?
Oh, shit.
We need more non-college pathways
But
to
you
work in
just
this
said
country.
critical thinking skills are important, and I'm curious as to why they would be important if really your only measure of the value of a college education is its financial return.
Well, because college is essentially a sorting device more than anything. The idea of it as a human capital expansion is more theoretical than actually proven true in the data on it. I mean, this is the whole premise of Brian Kaplan's book.
Explain the sorting thing. What do you mean?
Yeah, college is sure.
Do you think it should be a sorting thing, or do you think, unfortunately, it is a sorting thing?
I think it just kind of is what it is. Essentially, you have people who
Well, okay, wait. Didn't answer the question. I'm curious. Does he think it should be that way?
have different skills, who have different aptitudes, who have different work ethics and habits. And college is and employers don't know who these people are. And college is a very expensive and inefficient way for them to vaguely sort high potential employees from low potential employees.
So you don't see any value in and the reason why I ask, if you say that, like, sadly, it's just a sorting thing, is that, do you think that there is a universe where it's good to give people a higher education? Yes or no?
Sure, but Sam, let me just put it like this. How come when you go to college, if I do 7 semesters and then I quit right before graduation and I don't get the degree, employers, like, I don't get almost as much benefit, nearly as much benefit? It's because, unfortunately, college is really about the degree. We've got this huge degree inflation. It's not actually about the massive expansions in your critical thinking.
We do the same thing with high school diplomas, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a way for, I see what you're saying now. Where, like, you could literally go through all the classes, or all the classes except for maybe one gen ed or something, and not graduate with your degree. But is the employer really losing something from that? And it is a way for them to, like, pretty much verify. The degree is pretty much them verifying, like, hey, they accomplished this amount of stuff. But they could still do that with a transcript. You don't necessarily need the degree. If I could give them my transcript and be like, hey, I graduated, or I didn't graduate, but I finished all these other things, and I could do this, and I took all these classes where it's like, this is kind of the profession I'm going into. Do I really need to do those extra few classes for a degree that says that I did everything? Because I have the transcript that they tell you I went, they tell you I passed these things. So I can see where he's coming from that perspective.
You get a GED.
High school is also, it's the same thing. You're sorting people who can't complete their GED. Often it's because they don't do their homework, they don't show up to school. Well, it's not hard to get a GED.
Do you think that's the purpose of higher education, though? I mean, do you think that's the purpose of higher education? That should be the purpose I don't
know that it should be, but I think in practice it is.
Okay. So what do you think? Do you think that we should have higher education so that people can study stuff that's more sophisticated than in high school?
I think you can self-study more things than not in the age of the internet, right?
So you don't think that we need...
That is true. People can self-study a lot better now. The availability of these sources to, like, get information is very high now, which is good. But you still run into the issues where people just don't have the time, or they don't have the time, and they don't necessarily have the wherewithal to even, like, go through that stuff without some, like, kind of teacher or tutor, like, person there with them. I would say the time thing's, like, the big one. But for a good chunk of people, it's very easy to get some of this information and teach yourself things now, which is a huge positive.
Higher education.
I think it should be an option for people, but it should be largely with a mind to your vocation and your return on investment. I don't think, yeah, if you want to study poetry, I don't know why that you should have to spend $200,000 to do that. Go to your library, go to listen to YouTube lectures, go listen to Sam
Where do you
Seder.
think
Conflating the statutory rate and the effective rate? I would have to look again. It seems the effective rate was more around 41%. You're talking about the tax rate, right? Back when he said, like, back in the 50s and 60s. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about. Because I've also heard those numbers before. Yeah, I've also heard those numbers before where people said, like, we had a tax rate of 90%, or really high, like 70%, but were people actually paying for it? I know that those rates were there, of course, but like you said, we'd have to double check to see, like, how many people were paying that, like, what was going on. And that's what he wasn't going down that same reasoning, but he was saying something along the lines of, like, sure, it was at that rate, but people weren't paying it. That's what the guy on the left was saying. But if that's kind of what we want to go down to, if most people weren't paying that rate, and then we go back to that system, well, then the broader issue with taxes is when you are not entitled to the money that you earn. I don't know if you saw the beginning, but Sam was going down the route of being like, even the money you earn technically belongs to the government. Like, the money only has value because of the people, and the people have kind of, like, made it in this way where, like, the government made all the money that we have to begin with. Like, they're the one who prints it. They're the ones who technically, there's, like, say once an effective rate of 9%, post a certain amount, it's basically theft. We could go into a whole thing about that, about looking at being theft and all that. We can talk about taxes, but we won't get into that right now. Two things I just want to hit on real quick from what you said at the beginning. If that is true, that most people weren't paying that rate, bills or not. I have to stop. Sorry, I keep looking at the chat. Then, let me just hit on these two quick things. One, if what he's saying was true and what you're saying is like most people weren't paying that 90% tax rate or that 75% tax rate, then technically not necessarily wrong. And it didn't affect, like what Sam was saying, it didn't affect like this whole negative outcome of people not trying to get more or like going to those fields or whatever. Then technically we could do that again and maybe it could be fine. Theoretically, it could be fine. We did it once. We could theoretically do it again and things would still be fine. Maybe people aren't paying that huge amount as they were, but they would be paying more. People would be paying more. Some people would, 100%, if we had that rate on the book somewhere. So that's one. And two, I don't know why the percentage of taking what you earned and what you valued at a certain level is theft and not theft. So if you want to say that the 90% is 100% theft, I don't know why you wouldn't say 1% isn't theft. If I go in and I steal someone's safe from their house and like most of their money and the deed of their house or anything, I committed theft. I stole their stuff. If I go in and take a penny or take a candy from them, I still committed theft. The value difference is huge. It's a huge value difference, but theft was still completed. So if you want to say that 90% tax is theft, well then I feel like you kind of have to just say taxes in general is theft. And if that's what you want to go down, I would technically at the end of the day, if that's what you believe, I would either one, try and argue against your identification of theft, or I would just be like, okay, if you think all of this is theft, then I kind of have to be okay with some theft happening for it to happen. It's all taken by force, to be fair. True. I 100% agree. Taxes is taken by force at the end of the day, easily. But taking 90% is too much. Sure, you can fall on that line saying that 90% is too much. And I think, of course, I would agree that for most people that is too much. I would say that there probably exist some people where that would be okay. I can see scenarios where I would agree with Sam's position and being like, certain people making this amount of money that has this much of wealth, if there's so much negative outcomes because of the wealth that they have, I would first try to prove that. I would first try to say like, okay, the reasons these people have so much wealth that's causing negative outcomes for everyone else, therefore we're going to start taxing them more money. That will benefit everyone as a whole. Or when I say everyone as a whole, I say most of society as a whole. So I would have to weigh the odds. And then I'll even give it to you maybe. We agree that there are negative outcomes that from some rights that we have. So we agree that like giving people the right to own guns, giving people the freedom of speech leads to negative outcomes. So can we say that those things are just all naturally good? Well, no, there's bad things that come from that. So I could say like, sure, you can consider tax as theft, but at the end of the day, maybe it's a thing that is necessary for society to like take place. Ninety percent is 90%. It's still their wealth that they earned. Sure. Again, I don't know if you saw the beginning. What the route that you could go down is sure they earned it, but they earned it how? Like where did it come from? They earned it on the backs of some infrastructure that was already in place that they did not partake in. I don't know if you're a libertarian or you've looked at, but like the meme that people always go for libertarians is, don't you like roads? Don't you know that you need these roads to do a bunch of the shit that people have done? Which sure, it's a meme, but at the end of the day, there's infrastructure that was made before these people started earning that wealth that they benefited from. So like, was it all theirs? No. Now, was it 90%? Was 90% theirs? You could probably argue that. You want to argue like how much percent of their effort, of the money that they gained, was their effort alone. In which case, you would probably fall on the lines of being like, it definitely was over 90% kind of a thing. So like it wasn't. So the benefit that they gained from the infrastructure was not 90% worth. So it doesn't make sense to take 90% of it away from them. I think that's probably where you would land from the way that you're saying. Which, I mean, technically, I would probably agree. It probably was not 90% worth. But again, the main thing being, we can always say, I could fall on the line saying like, yeah, we can consider taxes theft if you want. You can say that it's a theft. But at the end of the day, I'm looking at what's best for society that's going to let us to run. Maybe some form of like governmental theft of taxes is necessary for society to operate in a way that I can like live my life. Everything is built off of some infrastructure. Everything after a certain point, of course, is built off the infrastructure that came before it. That's just a true thing. All we're saying is that when we say that, is that you have to we want to put that into place. We have to understand that when we say someone earned something on their own, there's a level of like, yes, they earned it on their own, but what things did they also earn based off of something prior? Sorry, I don't know what you're saying. No, everything would be. So, hey, I'm gonna finish this up. If you have a Discord and you'd want to talk about this, let me know, because I'd be up to talk about it. Um, yeah, but I agree that what I'm saying isn't like like a big out there kind of thing. I agree. I'm pretty much saying like the sky is blue. I understand that, but we just want to make sure that when we say someone earned something or did something of their own free will or did something of their own might or whatever they were able to accomplish, when we say that, we have to make sure we're including all the things that they were able to do because of someone else and because of other people that they are now benefiting off of. That's all I'm trying to say. Sure. And again, I understand that you would want to say 90% is too much. And that's where we would have to go back and forth is like, why are you okay with a certain percentage? Like the things that you say are okay with a certain percentage, like let's say theoretically, you say 10% is like the limit for me. I think 10% is a decent tax rate and nothing should be beyond that. And then I'll ask, well, why do you think 10%? And then you could list out, I think it's 10% because we are able to afford these things that will make our society better and will make us to function. And I'm like, okay. In that case, then you would have to agree that in the future, if we reached a point where those things are no longer being met, where like, say I want 10% to make sure that we have enough for roads and for like school, for like public school or something, whatever it may be. If it becomes a point where we need more money for that infrastructure, well, then you have to be okay and be like, okay, well now 10% isn't covering it. So now we have to raise it to 15%. And then you would be like, I don't know if you could argue against that then. You would have to be okay with increasing it until we can afford those things that you think it's good for at the 10% range, right? Or maybe you believe that once those things become too costly, then it becomes immoral to charge for them. And then therefore we throw it out. Sure, what should they provide? But what should they provide should also be dictated in some manner by the people the government is being run by. In a democracy or a representative democracy that we kind of have, there are some limits to what we can want, which we need to kind of put in place. But the people should decide what the government provides in some manner. Of course, yeah. The more that you think the government should take a hand of, the more taxes will be needed. I agree. But like I said, even if you think the government should only take care of one thing, whatever this thing is, it could be anything. If you think the government should provide this thing, maybe it's just some form of protection from outside forces from other countries, then you have to agree if the threat comes higher and more money is needed for that protection, well, then the taxes will have to increase, correct? Which means you could be okay with 10% now, and maybe 10% covers that protection. But if that protection becomes more costly or there's more need for it, well, then maybe they have to raise it to 15%. And then I don't see, okay, cool. So you agree, then you'd be okay with increasing taxes as long as it covers the demands that you have set. And that's then what the argument would be around. I think the government should cover this thing versus someone else thinks the government should cover this many things. So maybe you think the government should cover like 3 things, and Sam here with the government should cover like these 10 things. And because they should cover these 10 things, we need to charge more or we need to tax more. And that's what we come to. So then you would have to argue what the government should handle and everything like that. And that's what it would come down to. Okay. I do need to finish this though. So, um, okay, I'm gonna respond to this one, the Mon Bailey thing, and then I'm done. I'm telling you, I want to finish this. We're like 10 minutes still. Is he trying to Mon Bailey? I do think Sam can be a little slippery with some things that he says. I 100% agree. He does do that sometimes, but I think at the end, Sam normally lays out bare and thin what he believes. He does it with a little bit of like, what's the word? A little bit of showmanship sometimes, of like a little bit of jazz, a little bit of laughter there. But he does at the end of the day say, I think that I'm okay with taxing this much for this amount of money because I think the government should do more shit. I mean, he does at the end of the day tell you what he truly wants and kind of believes. I think he can be a little subversive at the beginning to try and get there, but at the end, I feel like he always gives away what he truly thinks.
Those people who did those lectures and basically populated most of those books in the library, where do you think they learned about poetry?
Universities in the age before. I mean, okay.
When did this age change? When did universities become?
I mean, you're trying to tell me that the internet and things like Wikipedia and YouTube haven't radically restructured our access to information and how we approach education?
No, that's not what I'm telling you. I'm not telling you that. I'm telling you that that information emanates from human beings. And those human beings went to university, and that at one point, the supply of new people who've gone to university, and I think you've even written how remote learning is certainly not as good as in person, right? Didn't you write something about that?
Well, when it's forced upon kids.
Right. No, but I mean, if there's no universities, then they're forced to do it if they want to learn it.
But I'm not saying there should be no universities. I'm saying there should be. Harvard is going to study English and produce poetry till the cows come home. They've got billion-dollar endowments. All I'm saying is I don't see why taxpayers have to subsidize poetry.
Well, I was getting at the question as to what you thought the value of higher education is. If you thought it was a lament that, and I don't agree with the premise that it's simply a sorting thing for businesses, but you feel that way.
When I went to UMass, most people went there to get the piece of paper, get drunk. They learned basically nothing. They slept through half their classes. They cheated on tests. Like, I'm just telling you the honest truth. We can pretend college is really about, growing and learning and expanding your circles. And for some people it is, but I learned far more since I left college doing actual work than I did in these dusty classrooms. I really think it's vastly overhyped. And I think we need more alternatives, more apprenticeships, more programs like Google's doing.
I think a quick thing that he is kind of saying, I think colleges maybe have these things. I'm just more like whether or not people take them up on that. I think colleges are a great place for people to talk to new people and interact with it. Like, it's a way for you to kind of go off on your own normally, unless you're like commuting and everything, and take more responsibility on yourself and do things that are going to hopefully propel you to where you're going to be in the future. But it's also a great way to it is a good social aspect. I think it's a way where you can go out there, be more of an adult, and then challenge yourself a bit more. I feel like colleges probably offer these, but maybe not to the extent that he wants. And I don't know if people just don't take it up on it. Just don't take the colleges up on it for a lot of that stuff. Maybe. I don't know.
Right, where you can learn to code outside of a 4-year degree program. Every kid shouldn't have to go to college, because the system that we have now is making a college degree the new high school degree. And
all of a sudden, where do you think we fit in terms of industrialized nations in terms of college participation?
I don't know off the top of my head. Probably lower than places where it's free, quote unquote.
But I mean, give me a sense. I mean, for some reason, other societies think that higher education is important. They could all be wrong. I'm just curious as to where you think we're doing with this. Because it sounds like you think that everybody goes to college in this country, and
I don't think that. I think that's part of why I oppose student debt cancellation is that 2 in 3 Americans over age 25 don't have bachelor's degrees.
Why do you think so many other nations around the world don't subscribe to this notion that higher education is just a waste?
Well, because again, it's associated with a big premium. Your college degree earns you more over a lifetime, but is it actually because you're expanding
even
your brain?
Even in places where there's much more higher tax rates too?
Sure, they also tend to have much lower graduation rates because they when it's just
I'm talking
free.
graduates. I'm talking about graduations.
Oh,
because U.S.
I don't know enough about Europe. I said earlier that I think Europe had something where I think some places in Europe had some form of free college tuition that they had to roll back. I want to say they rolled it back 2 or 3 years ago, or maybe only last year. I had to double check. I read it a while ago, and they did see negative outcomes between having a huge free system like that. I would have to go back and reread it. The EU doesn't pay for its military. We have some of the. NATO forces definitely are some of the part that is that protection. But they have some military, don't they? I don't know. Again, true. A lot of places let the U.S. do that.
Number 5 in folks who have graduated from university. Number 5 in the country between the ages of 55 and 64. Number 5, but in the ages of 25 to 34, we're not even in the top 10. In other words, the percentage of graduates in this country has gone down significantly over the past 20 years relative to the rest of the OECD.
Sure. It matters what those graduates are in. If France has 10 times as many, poetry majors as us, but we have enough STEM majors and they don't, then we will be better off than them. So that's sure. Okay. I'm not sure what the significance of that is.
I'm just curious as to why these other countries are so deluded in the value of
well, they're not governed in the way I'd want to. That I admit my views as a libertarian are a very small minority. I don't pretend they're widely adopted. I simply think that a lot of them should be, and I'm here to say why.
All right. Well, I think you made a good argument about the immorality of relieving debt to people who hold it in college, and the immorality of all government, I guess, of government largesse in any fashion whatsoever.
Well, not all. To be fair, and this is where I do kind of don't like when Sam does this. He didn't say all, because he even conceded, like, thinking that there is some time okay to do it for, like, he said K through 12.
Except for that is helping businesses accrue wealth.
Well, I think the basic needs of society, like infrastructure and national defense, need to be funded by taxes. And yeah, that involves people paying for others. But I think when it's a personal investment like education that will earn you huge sums more over your lifetime, it's perfectly fair to expect you to pay back that yourself. And I think we should focus our efforts on actual ways to make colleges more affordable, rather than just putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole and spending tons of taxpayer money on something that doesn't actually solve the problem.
We're going to run out of time, so I'm just going to ask you one more question. How do we make college more affordable?
Well, the first thing we got to do is scale back the federal subsidies. Subsidies have driven up the price about at 61
By subsidies,
cents.
you're talking about the loans.
Yeah, the subsidized loans in particular, the federal loans.
What do you mean by subsidized loans?
They're at below market interest rates. That's what subsidized. Some of them, yeah. So the loans.
Reduced interest rates loans. There's still interest. We're still accruing interest, right? The United States still
some
accruing.
of them. Yeah, sure. Okay, they do have interest on them.
When the moratorium ends, we're still going to be accruing interest on all of this.
Yes, they have interest rates. But the point is that we've massively subsidized demand. And of course, that's going to inflate prices. It's estimated that about for every dollar we spend on student loans, it's jacked up tuition about 50 cents, and that's been captured by the universities. That is a big part of this problem. We can't just massively subsidize demand and expect prices not to go up. We've got to return it to a market-based system. Private banks will only provide loans where they actually are going to be able to pay them off on average. They won't be able to predict it perfectly, but you'd actually have to show, I'm going to study this, my productive income will be this, I'll be able to pay it back. The other side of it, Sam, is that colleges today have massively exploded their bureaucracies. The administrator to student ratios has enormously increased, while professors even, in the actual academic side, isn't getting the investment. So at public colleges, that should really be reined in. At private schools, I guess do what you want, but I think we need to vastly cut the administrative state. Mitch Daniels at Purdue in Indiana has actually shown us how you can freeze tuition and save families millions of dollars if you enact even a smidgen of fiscal conservatism in how we run these universities.
I would agree that we can put more money towards professors, frankly. I don't know that Daniels did that in terms of professors as much as he did cutting administration costs, et cetera, et cetera. But you don't think that the incredible disinvestment in state universities in any way had anything to do with the increase in tuitions that are paid by the customers? I mean, because I don't think
that's the root, because you can go back to 1960 or 1970 and college was dirt cheap and there was very little state investment compared to what we have now. It's like that's not
as a percentage wise. The operating costs have gone from 1/3 borne by tuition to 1/2 borne by tuition. I mean, there is. I mean, I will say this. I think there is a lack of evidence for the argument that massive disinvestment, which is real. I mean, it is quite obvious that there's
pulled back, sure.
Yes, pulled back significantly since really starting in the 70s and really in the 80s is when we started to see, and then it has exponentially increased over the decades. Whether that has contributed, well, it obviously contributed on a state level because if you're going to a state school, tuition is borne more by, or I should say the cost of operating the college has become borne more by the students who are going. And of course, the lowest, and I'm sure you understand this dynamic, if the lowest price thing gets raised, that creates the opportunity for the other things in that market to raise their prices too. If the cheapest product on the shelf raises its cost by 25%, the more expensive ones are also going to raise theirs by 25% because that dynamic is fairly fixed. And that's what's happened in thing. I think there's an argument that administrative bloat has added to it. I think physical plant, because of competition, has increased. And I mean,
UMass was paying its coaches millions of dollars, and we sucked. I mean, UMass essentially.
Oh, I would agree. We should cut sports. Cut sports.
That was one of my takes that pissed off conservatives, Sam, on campus. Was I basically said we should just abolish the football team.
Well, I don't think you necessarily need to abolish it, but you can make it a lot cheaper.
Move it to D3 and cut the budget to 20% because they suck anyway. We pour millions of our tuition dollars into it, and then they could. While I was there, they could not win a game. So
and student loans certainly was sort of a neoliberal push to essentially have a market solution. A lot of those loans that the federal government now owns were originated by the private sector, by banks. After the financial crisis, we bought up a lot of those as part of backing up the private sector, which cuts against the argument that banks can make a good assessment in that thing, particularly when there's fees to be collected.
The problem is the banks are so intertwined with government and bailouts that in a free market,
we can agree on that, and we can agree on that thing. Of course, we had a freer market back before the Great Depression, and there's a reason why we have the FDIC and all sorts of bank regulation, or we did anyways. But that's maybe a different day. But all right, well, Brad, I really appreciate you coming on. It was fun.
Brad, that was his name.
I appreciate you having me on, and the fact that you actually do debates with people. It's a rare thing these days, and it's valuable.
I know it's hard to find people who will do this, but I appreciate.
I found it very hard, and that's why I really appreciate you having me, because not very many people will talk about these things.
All right, well, thank you. I appreciate it, and we're all appreciative. All right,
bye,
folks.
Okay, we'll stop it there because I don't want to. Now that the guy's there, not to defend himself, I don't necessarily want to hear what Sam's gonna say about it. But I don't know enough about. I do want to read about the. I want to read up on people's arguments against the loans, the federal loans, helping out and increasing the amount of money towards colleges. I want to read more about that to see what they say. overall, I pretty much what I came in with, I'm still kind of leaving with. I agree. I am pro some relief. I think that we should be giving. I think maybe where the money is going could be better suited somewhere. Like who it's going to could be better focused on specific people. And at the end of the day, I do think that there should be some form of what we should be working towards is a way so that people can go into these colleges or get a higher education that is more suited for what they need. Maybe, I'm just thinking about what if we just raise it up from 12 to 16? I think that's what he said too. No, 12 to 14. I think having some higher level of critical thinking skills that go beyond just your normal high school. Maybe we wouldn't need this if we can better fund or do better things for our high schools. I don't know if you could do that, but I still think there's a level of education that could be provided to people beyond high school currently. So whether we can add that to the high school curriculum or make it more affordable for people to go to college, I think at the end of the day, I don't think someone who is capable of going to college and capable of doing the work and getting a good degree should not be stooped by debt or should not be stopped because of financial things. If they are capable of doing it, I think we should help them get that across the line so that they can accomplish that thing. Because if that person accomplishes their degree and can go into the workforce and is better suited, which most people who go to college, a good portion of people who finish college can do, then it's just a positive for the society as a whole. So I don't want it ever to be a problem from a financial standpoint that people do not go to college. That's what I feel, at least. Yeah. Cool. So I think that covers everything. How long has that been? Almost 3 hours. So the debate itself went for quite a while. If that guy in chat, hey, if you ever want to have a discussion, let me know. We can always do a Discord thing or something. It would be cool to talk to you that. I am curious about talking more about this whole. I've talked about it before with some people, but this whole idea of taxes theft thing, which I think at the end we kind of came to agreement. It's just how much are we willing to go up to, and what is the government supposed to be in charge of, and that comes down to some values that we go through, and then we can discuss what would be good and bad, what would be the negative outcomes of the government taking more on, and stuff like that. So, yeah. Well, I think I'm going to cut it here for now. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see y'all later.